Welcome to today's webinar, Unlocking E-Commerce Growth, Mastering Platform Migration, presented by Shopify Plus and Coldsmoke Creative, a certified Shopify Plus partner agency. From chatting to thousands of different brands, we know that despite knowing that their current platform is preventing them from reaching their full potential, the prospect of a platform migration can seem daunting and scary and never the right time. Today's webinar aims to outline Shopify and how Coldsmoke Creative handle migrations in order to mitigate risk and set up brands for long-term success. Our agenda today will start with a quick introduction to our lovely panel, followed by the panel discussion around platform migration, some tips and tricks to ensure that your migration is well planned for, followed by the brand success story sharing how a well-run migration positively impacted a fast-growing brand. So without further ado, let's introduce our panel. Hi, I'm Mark Schesser, the founder of Coldsmoke Creative. We are certified Shopify Plus partners and have been since 2021. We specialize in migrations to Shopify Plus, custom Shopify design and development, headless storefront development, and ongoing optimization. We work with some of the largest merchants on Shopify and have been part of the Shopify ecosystem since 2016. Pedro, I'll turn it to you.
Hi, I am Pedro Landaverde. I am a senior solution architect at Coldsmoke Creative with over 10 years of experience working in Shopify projects, focusing on crafting solutions for large and enterprise level clients in Shopify.
Thanks, Pedro. And Hailey, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Hailey. I am the Senior Manager of E-commerce at Sid Mashburn and Mashburn. We are a retail company for men's and women's clothing. Our headquarters is in Atlanta, Georgia, but we've got stores in 6 different locations across the U.S. I have been with the company for almost 7 years. About half of that time was spent on Magento 1, and then I helped our team re-platform over to Shopify Plus in July 2022.
Thanks so much, Hailey, for being here. Matt?
Hi, my name is Matt Dunbar. I am a senior solutions architect at Coldsmoke. I also have a pretty long background in Magento and Shopify. I started working with Magento, kind of transitioned more and more towards Shopify across my career, and I've been working in e-commerce for most of the past 10 years.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for being here. So to start, Matt, I'll turn this over to you. What are some top reasons that companies are considering or should consider a migration in the next 6 months?
So I think the biggest consideration has to be, what are the pain and frustrations that you're experiencing on your current platform? What are the reasons that it isn't working for you today? So often when we're looking at someone coming from a more enterprise-oriented solution, maybe something like Magento, where the technical complexity is way higher, it's way harder for an agency to have a success there. There's a lot more kind of hit and miss experiences there. It's really hard to get things done on time, on budget, and to really have a great experience there. Another one is coming from the smaller side. I also see companies who significantly outgrow their platform. Maybe they're coming from something like WooCommerce, and it was great 10 years ago when they were doing $1,000 a month in revenue. It's not necessarily the solution for them today. And the other big consideration in my eyes is just simplicity. I always like to default to the simplest solution that can get the job done. And I think Shopify fits in really well there.
Yeah, totally agree. Another thing that I would add is if your marketing team is coming to you and suggesting tools to make their jobs easier or just basic job function tools like email marketing or SMS marketing, and you're finding that those tools don't integrate well with your homegrown solution or the platform that you're on, or they will take quite a bit of extra development time to get integrated and kept up, then it might be a good time to consider migrating to a platform like Shopify that basically plays well with everything. So Pedro, I'd like to turn this over to you. What are some of the top hesitations that you've seen from clients when ahead of a migration?
As you well said, most of the times these type of migrations come from a push from the marketing teams inside the businesses. And their main concerns when thinking on a replatforming are maintaining their SEO positioning as well as their tech stack compatibility. Those two factors usually make them hesitate about if it's a good idea to move to a new platform. And for that, Shopify is a very well prepared as out of the box. It already covers some of the SEO needs for any website that needs to be optimized for being crawled by the search engines. And in terms of the tech stack, Shopify are also out of the box includes APIs and webhooks to practically have the platform integrated with any other third party that needs to be integrated to the system. Even nowadays, a lot of those systems are integrated by default with already built apps.
Great, thank you. When it comes to these hesitations, picking one of the top ones, how do you like to address this with clients ahead of the migration? Pedro.
Sorry, Mark, could you repeat the question? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, no worries. So picking one of the top hesitations that you mentioned on the previous slide, how do you like to address these with clients?
Okay, so I will take on the one about SEO. It usually comes to be very empathetic with the clients to first understand where are they standing from, their previous experience with SEO in general, because there are a lot of bad practices when it comes to this term in the industry. So we want to be empathetic on understanding them to then give them the proper advice, and by sharing proper data backed up by big players as Google or Shopify itself, demonstrate how the platform is really prepared to be offering everything that they need in terms of SEO. That includes things like the capability of programming redirects directly from the Shopify admin. Usually, other platforms require additional plugins to have those type of redirects configured, and that is something that comes out of the box in Shopify. Other tools that exist natively to Shopify are the capability of programming metadata, meta tags for each of the pages directly from the Shopify admin. So under the different Shopify objects admin, you can configure things like meta description, meta titles, and much more rich features like Shopify automatically creates a sitemap.xml that is used by the search engines to have the site properly crawled. And even with the themes that are used to offer the front end experience of the stores, Shopify has a very strict control over which themes go into the theme store, so that every theme is well prepared in terms of technical SEO, things like having a proper hierarchy structure, being semantic ready for being indexed by the search engines. All those basics are already covered, and even a little beyond that with things like microdata to be really well understood by the search engines. So basically, by demonstrating all of these points and talking to the clients about how Shopify really offers all of that out of the box, is that we address that hesitation from them and help them understand the benefits that they are gaining by moving to this platform.
Yeah, that all makes sense. It is sort of a common refrain that you hear from clients who aren't that familiar with Shopify, but they've heard from somewhere, I don't know where, that Shopify isn't set up well for SEO. And I think maybe that's more on the like content side and the blogging side, but certainly in the structure of themes and everything that you just listed, it does seem pretty well supported or in a good spot to support strong technical SEO.
Yes, and on that specific point, um, Shopify has a predefined URL structure that some clients that don't have the necessarily knowledge may interpret as an issue. But once you really pass them on the information that they need to have, they will understand that the closed URL structure that Shopify offer has an intention behind it and can be used as a benefit and is not an issue at all.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Matt, what are 3 things that a company needs to be clear about or consider ahead of preparing for a migration?
All right. So I think the first thing I always like to think about is the data migration and integration. So that could be something like your ERP syncing perhaps inventory data, your PIM syncing product information, and that could be like a ongoing long-term sync. But then there's also the migration process. So that could be your customer accounts coming from your old system to your new system. And there's really nuanced details there, like what do we do about resetting passwords? Or if we don't have direct access to the customer's passwords in the old system, how can we make that as smooth as possible? Really ironing out the details there and how all of the fields or the attributes in both systems map out up front. If you can solve those problems in spreadsheets or in documents before you ever get to code, you can potentially save tens or hundreds of hours there even. The next big one that I like to think about pretty early on is SEO. It's obviously important that we don't just have a URL stop working. We might have a product page ranking in search very well, but we want to change the URL structure to follow better practices or to follow Shopify standards. We just have to make sure we understand those, we plan ahead for all of those, and that they're something that we're being proactive about and not reactive about. And then the last one is just in general, making sure there's really a discovery there. So I like to make sure that we really dive in and cover functional requirements, understand what the client needs to consider the project a success. So what are the key features that their customers need for a great experience, and making sure that those are all clearly planned out with solutions ahead of time, whether that's custom apps, third-party apps, or it's something that can just be implemented in the theme.
Yeah, great. I'll probably say it 4 more times in this webinar, but discovery up front is so important, especially with migrations, and it allows you to slow down to go fast. So what does a well-executed migration look and feel like? This, I can take this, it sort of peels off of that, what you just said and what I was reemphasizing. For most projects, but especially for migrations, you need to have that discovery period up front to allow you to slow down to go fast. There are a lot of considerations during a migration that aren't part of your typical design and build project. You want to understand what's the current functionality of the site and how is that going to map to Shopify's native functionalities and or the app and partner ecosystem. You want to review the current tech stack and apps. Matt, you talked a little bit about this previously, but how do your third parties and like ERPs, WMS, OMS, how do those work with Shopify? Do they have an integration? Great, you're all set. Or do they require some sort of a custom API integration? That could work, or maybe you take this opportunity to upgrade those systems as well, although we'd probably recommend a bit of a phased approach if possible, not taking on all of those business changing projects all at once. Does your platform currently have third-party apps? Do they have Shopify versions? If so, like if they're a modern company, chances are they do, and it's essentially just a one-click install on Shopify and you're great, but you want to map that out ahead of time. So a well-executed migration looks intentional. On the data side, Matt, you alluded to this, but you want to map out your customer data and create a plan for how you're going to migrate your customer accounts over to Shopify. And what's your communication plan? Customers need to know what to do and how to log into the new system and what data is going to be carried over, what data, if any, is going to need to be repopulated. Your order history. How much order history are you bringing over from your old system to your new system? We typically recommend about 2 years worth of data, but we want to make sure that we're backing up all of that data so it's not, lost into the ether. Then you have your product data and how that fits from the old system into the new system on Shopify. Mapping that out ahead of time saves a lot of headache. And then, of course, you have your content, like your images and your videos, your blogs, if you have any. Oftentimes, that's not a one-to-one replication on Shopify, so you want to map that out ahead of time. And then both you, Matt, and Pedro have talked about this, but SEO and URL structure, understanding how your URL structures, they're likely going to be changing from whatever platform you're on to fit Shopify's confines, and create that plan and the 301 redirects accordingly. So in planning and looking, intentional, it also should feel organized. There needs to be a plan and a checklist. Otherwise, you will forget things, whether it's during the project or on launch day. We organize this by doing that discovery up front, like you mentioned, mapping out how all the data from your existing site will be reflected in the proper Shopify objects, documenting the migration plan before things even begin. So, Hailey, I would love to get your thoughts on what is the right time to migrate. When are there any situations where you should postpone a migration? I mentioned at the beginning, it probably will never feel right, but at some point you have to rip the Band-Aid off.
Yes, absolutely. My big takeaway when I was preparing for this is, when is the right time to migrate before you have to migrate would be ideal. It's simply put, we were on Magento 1 and it felt like we were at just the end of the road with being able to make site updates. We had to rely on our tech team for everything. Nothing was easy. We were really kind of at a stalemate with what we could do to kind of enhance our shopping experience. And our platform on Magento 1 was not, we felt, indicative of our brand identity and, how we wanted to present ourselves. So, we always had plans to move to Shopify, but it was just, when to get a buy-in of our whole organization, which kind of brings me to when you should postpone it, which is when I feel like you don't have the buy-in, or the full attention of the key people within your organization. The Shopify migration will touch almost every single area of your company, every single team, every employee. And so you really do need everyone to get on board. It's going to take a lot of extra work for everyone, on top of doing your normal day-to-day work. There's a lot more that will be added to your plate. One thing that was really beneficial to us, I think, to take into consideration for migration is having a sort of project manager to help you set timelines and manage the tasks and everything to do. It's definitely worth the investment of a smaller company, in my opinion, to hire someone to guide you through that process who knows Shopify, who's been through it. For the most part, no one in our company had ever been in Shopify before. So there was a big learning curve there. So I think any help you can get from someone that does know the back end of Shopify is really beneficial. So that's that was it for me on that.
Yeah, no, super helpful. Pedro, could you share an example of a migration that went well?
Yes, and taking on Hailey's point from last slide, I would like to talk about Mashburn. I think that was a very successful project due to many reasons, but I think that for me, the differentiator in this one was that it wasn't a migration that where only the technical team from the client was involved. They had a multidisciplinary team involved from the merchant side, from the business side, from marketing, from design. So while we were planning on how to set up their store, all of those parties, including Hailey, were including on all that process, and that really made a difference. In one side, it demonstrated the ability from Shopify to transition from being owned, like from having an e-commerce system owned totally by a technical team, and instead, while we were preparing to launch, the marketing team started to own part of the platform. For achieving that, I think it was like it demonstrated the simplicity that the platform offers to be operated. Of course, we as a Shopify partner at Coldsmoke give them guidance on how to best use the platform, what were the best practices under which it operates. But it was easy for them to take on how to operate it on the day-to-day. This preparation before launching was crucial for having a success and smoothly transition when we actually launch. And having a team that focused on the customer care before we actually launched the store was also essential for how the things went. I remember that even before we launched, they were already adding banners to their legacy site about just letting the customers know about the transition that was to come. They posted on social network, and all of those reinforcement to the clients about what was about to happen led this launch to be seen as an event that they could use to push the sales instead of something that was a technical a technical issue or conflict where they wanted customers to stay away from the site for that duration of time. And because of all of that preparation from their team and the requirements that they communicated to us as an agency, is that we could prepare and QA the site to be exactly as they imagined. And after that, actually, when we launched, I remember that their numbers were very, very positive. And all of that was because of the proper preparation, of course, the delivery that we did, but also because of the key help and paper that the Mashburn team had during this launch.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that hard work from the marketing team and communicating to your customers. Hailey, I agree that was really critical in making the launch go smoothly.
I think something to add to that is, we had access to Shopify for months and months before we launched. I think to kind of speak to the preparation, Pedro, we had to figure out how to set up products before we launched. We had to figure out how we're going to fulfill orders before we launched. There was a ton of testing that went into the warehouse side of things. For our POS locations, how are they going to ring orders? There's a lot of preparation that needs to go into it to make for that smooth launch. And I think because we spent so many months kind of over preparing is what made that actual launch day so smooth as well.
Right. Yeah. It's not like on day one or like launch day, then you learn how to add and remove products from Shopify or get POS.
Right.
Yeah. It's months of preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So shifting gears, Matt, any examples of when a migration has gone wrong and any tips to avoid it?
Yeah, so I've inherited quite a few projects like this where, a client starts a project, they get in a little over their heads, and then they decide we need to find somebody else to sort this out, to kind of fix this, to get us in a better place. I find the couple key points are really what leads to that. One is a small or maybe even a larger team, a non-technical team, being sold on a super technical, complex product. So that might be like a self-hosted solution, or even a solution that they own themselves, but where they have to write and maintain a lot of the back-end code. Really, these really complicated products that could have thousands of development hours that don't necessarily have the same CMS, easy to manage tools, and having a team who's just not too technical trying to figure out how to work with that is a huge one for leading to failure. Another one that I see a lot is a merchant just works with an agency or a freelancer who maybe just doesn't quite have the experience of working with brands at their scale. I think it's really noticeable on just about any platform that there's very different challenges that a merchant's going to have when they're doing $5,000 a month versus $5 million a month. And it really puts you in completely different ballparks as far as what kind of problems they're facing. A merchant or a company who's doing $5,000 a month probably isn't thinking about an ERP or making their customer account transition as seamless as possible, for example.
Sure. And I guess the part of how it can be avoided is everything we talked about with the planning and doing the discovery up front.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's a matter of find a team that you're really comfortable with, make sure that they are planning heavily in advance, and you should be in pretty good shape from there.
Great. So why do we recommend brands switch to Shopify Plus today, and what makes it especially important? I can jump in on this one. I think that the number one thing that if somebody, asked me this question is just the platform's fast pace of innovation. There's no other platform that's innovating as regularly or as quickly as Shopify. And every morning, the Shopify team wakes up and works on making their platform and their checkout as optimized as possible so that brands on the platform can worry about all of the other challenges that come with running an e-commerce brand. Twice a year, Shopify has their editions, sometime in the winter and sometime in the summer, where they release hundreds of new features spanning from integrating artificial intelligence to removing roadblocks that once existed for enterprise brands like variant limits or poor B2B experience, internationalization, updating checkout to be a single page checkout instead of a multi-step checkout. The list literally goes on. And it's just impossible that like a homegrown solution, like you mentioned, Matt, inside of a brand that was developed years ago is ever going to be able to keep pace with that innovation. And I don't think there are any other e-commerce platforms right now that are innovating as quickly either. And it's actually very telling to go, you can look on LinkedIn and see Shopify's recent hires. You can see that relatively recently, they've been recruiting a lot of talent from other platforms, particularly on the sales side. And I'm guessing that those people were tired of losing deals to Shopify as they've continued to innovate and have won more merchants from players that are typically winning those enterprise deals. I think, the other reason is to unlock your marketing team. I think we've seen merchants coming to us and their marketing team feels like they're fighting with two hands tied behind their back because they don't have the tools that they need to do their job. In the same way that the Apple App Store has attracted the best developers because they were most easily able to monetize there, the Shopify ecosystem has the most robust app store with apps and services that can extend the functionality of your store. And this creates a flywheel effect where the best tools and support for your business are all available on Shopify, whereas they're not always available on other platforms. The developers in the ecosystem who are innovating, they're going to choose to support Shopify first. And this is one of the main benefits of being on Shopify is that you can arm your marketing teams with the best marketing tools. Everything from email marketing, SMS marketing, personalization, UGC, A/B testing, cross-sell and upsell. All of these tools allow you to allow your team to get really smart about how they convert traffic once it's on the site, really with one click. And then we can't talk about Shopify without talking about its checkout. And simply put, Shopify has the best checkout of any e-commerce platform or competitor. There was recently an external study, which I think we can send along in follow-up materials by a big three consulting firm that found that Shopify's overall conversion rate outpaces the competition by 36% and by an average of 15%. And this was comparing Shopify against Salesforce, WooCommerce, BigCommerce, and Adobe/Magento. And a big part of this is another unique to Shopify feature, which is Shop Pay, which is their accelerated checkout platform. And this is like a one-tap accelerated checkout option, which allows shoppers to speed through every purchase with their saved shipping and billing information, even if they've never shopped at your store, but they've saved this at any other Shopify site, it'll work. And this is an example of a great network effect that you get by just being on Shopify. And this study actually found that when using Shopify, it can lift conversion rate as much as 50% compared to a guest checkout, and which outpaced other accelerated checkout options by at least 10%. And what's interesting is that even just the presence of Shop Pay, like the button, the purple button, according to this study, it can increase lower funnel conversions by 5%. So it's really I think a compelling reason to get onto the Shopify platform.
Mark, can I speak really quickly on the brand side of things, just to add a little more color? Because, as someone that's in it every day, I can't overstate just how user-friendly it really is to use as well. I'm, as the e-commerce lead, I'm in there every day, but we have people on our photo team that are in it every day. We have people in our merchandising team that are in it every day looking at reporting. It really is so user-friendly and just allows you to take control of your business and your, the creative in ways that you didn't before. And I also think just the apps are so wonderful. We have an app that we use called Back in Stock, and it's very straightforward. If we're sold out of something, you sign up with your email or with a text to get notified if it's back in stock. And that's something that would have taken us, hours and hours of dev work to complete in Magento 1. It's a super simple app that we just added to our store, designed it very straightforward. And we generated over $1 million in sales just because of that app this year alone. So things like that you spoke to the network of developers and that want to work with Shopify. I just think there's little things like that make your business so easy to run and increase your revenue that only Shopify gives you access to.
That's a great anecdote. Thank you for sharing that. That's an amazing stat about the Back in Stock app. And yeah, like you said, it would have taken hours and hours to build that functionality custom on Magento, and then it probably would have broken. You would have had to keep it up.
Exactly.
And I'm sure it wouldn't have come with like reporting or anything like that. Like you may know inherently, like, yes, this is driving sales, but it probably wouldn't have fed into your analytics or had analytics of its own.
Exactly. That's very well said.
Thanks. So Matt, when you receive an RFP to update a current e-commerce stack or platform, why or when would you recommend new technology?
Yeah, so I think I will pretty much always look at this as what is the simplest way to solve the problem I'm being handed. We have to factor in there all the future plans, all the extensibility that they need, perhaps cost of ownership, although those tend to go hand in hand, where the simpler solution tends to have the lower cost in the end, at least when you're operating at kind of a larger business scale. And with that, I think that pretty much just leads to Shopify. Shopify is such a simple solution here that gets the job done and works really well.
Great. So I want to turn our full attention now to our brand spotlight, which is Sid Mashburn and Ann Mashburn. We have Hailey here with us, who, as we mentioned, is an e-commerce senior manager at Sid Mashburn and Ann Mashburn, and was a leader throughout the whole migration from Magento to Shopify, and has great experience both with the old site and now managing the new site. And so excited to get her additional perspective on a few topics. So you talked about it a little bit already, Hailey, but I hate to bring up any bad memories, but I would love to hear a little bit about your experience on Magento.
Absolutely. So yes, it felt like we were one of the last few people on Magento 1. We weren't even on one of the later versions of it, but I spoke to this earlier. It just felt like everything we always compared it to kind of a house of cards. It felt like we were afraid to make one update because we felt like it would break somewhere else. And it just was, everything was connected and in a negative way. So we really relied on our tech team to do every single update. And, as an e-commerce lead, nothing was in my hands to control. Someone who's, looking at the product every day, who's very hands-on with our marketing. So it just felt like it was very tech driven. And, I always think of this example that, I'd be on our dresses page, for example, and to just move one dress, further down on the page, I would have to click it and scroll down manually to just move something on its location on the website. So things that are so easy to do with data in Shopify were just so manual. In Magento, it was not user-friendly at all in terms of, reindexing the site or updating the homepage. It was very code heavy. And as someone who's not a developer and does not code, that led to a lot of problems as well. So those are some just, I won't say highlights, but some bullets there on our Magento experience.
Yeah, fair enough. And what was, as you were going, experiencing those from a day-to-day perspective, at what point did you say, okay, we have to, what was the breaking point? We have to make a change.
We are an omni-channel retailer. I mentioned we have our online channel, but also several store locations, and none of that was connected in Magento. I think that's a huge benefit to Shopify Plus, is that you have the Shopify POS as well as the Shopify e-commerce. I think integration of that was really key. We touched on this earlier, just the data also that you don't have access to when the two aren't connected. We were having to manually add people to our email list who said they wanted to sign up for our emails in stores because there was no connection to the two. And then just a view of the customer as well. Our store teams didn't know if someone had purchased something online. Returns were a nightmare in that case. So I think just having an omni-channel retailer was big for us, and needing that. And then, just hearing from everyone in the industry, just Shopify is the best in class for a retailer of our size, all the benefits that came along with it. It was kind of no question that Shopify would be our partner for for our next platform.
Yep. What are, on that topic of the new platform, what are some of the most important features or functionality you were looking, and did any surprise you?
I guess I buried the lead earlier when I spoke up to the Shopify benefits, but I think just it being user friendly, for me being able to go in and easily make updates, that I understood what I was doing, being able to test it on the live site before we go live with it was huge. POS was huge. Reporting is another really big one. I think in Magento we were relying on, again, sort of our tech team to build out our reports and to spit out all the data that we are receiving from Magento and kind of manipulating it. Shopify has so many great reports that are already pre-built out, or you can easily just, export your sales for a certain time frame and do what you want with it. It's just, the reporting is, I think, a huge win in Shopify, and, already built in. I touched on apps, but there's been so many great apps we've added to our store that we use on a daily basis that, again, would take hours and hours of dev to do on a different platform, that are just already pre-built in Shopify. You add it to your store. It's super easy to use. And then you touched on this earlier, Mark, but just the fact that Shopify is always innovating. It's not a static platform. Their tech support is really great. If we ever have any questions, they know exactly what to do and help. You can call them on the phone, you can chat. That's been a great benefit. It felt like it was, the blind leading the blind when it came to Magento one sometimes. And I think just to sum it up, just the backend admin is so much friendlier to different abilities and skill sets within the company. We don't have a dev team member on our team at all. So the fact that we're able to run a site day to day without any dev needs on a daily basis has been a huge win.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you wish you had known, or prior to going into the migration, or advice that you have for anyone who's in a similar, looking to make a similar transition?
I think something that we kind of reflected on after the fact when it came to just the prep for the migration was, we ended up using a different company for our design side of things than we did on the dev side of things. So Coldsmoke was obviously responsible for the dev side of things. And ultimately, we feel like some advice would be to maybe select an agency that does both, which I know Coldsmoke does. But I think, our company, we pride ourselves on just design and aesthetics and, the creative side of things. I feel like we went with a different agency, and which ultimately maybe presented, not issues, it's just more conversations that needed to be had. I think a design agency that doesn't do dev work thinks something is easy to do in Shopify and would work, and then you get the dev team brought in and it just complicates things. And I think having that be one company would be great advice to give. Which, and again, too, that ultimately led to, I think, like higher costs because there's hours that the design team and the dev team have to speak. So that was one takeaway that we learned. I think another one would be just save some learnings for after you launch as well. I think we probably pushed launch further than it needed to because we wanted it to be perfect. But I think there are things that you will ultimately learn once you launch. And so there's to not delay your launch because of that, I think the development's always going to be a constant cost. I mean, we still have weekly calls with Coldsmoke on things we're adding to our site and enhancing to our site. I think kind of to that note too, because of the learnings you'll be able to gain being on Shopify, customer shopping behavior, things people are adding to the cart together, you'll come up with more ideas to enhance your site and make it better. So you're constantly developing it, you're constantly enhancing it to try to increase your conversion. And then I spoke to this earlier, but I think just the project management side of things, making sure you really have the buy-in of your company, that you're prepared to devote extra hours to the launch outside of your normal day-to-day. Really kind of having that mental headspace and know that going in will be valuable as well.
Yeah, all great points. I really love the one especially about, I'm going to botch the quote, but don't let perfect be the enemy of done or good. I forget exactly what it is, but you always learn so much once you actually get whether it's a product or a website out in the wild and you get real traffic on there and real data, because you can see what's important and what isn't. And instead of rabbit holing on something to get it exactly right, it may turn out that customers don't care about that. And there's something else you should be focusing your attention on.
Right.
So, now that the site is live, it's been live for a bit, but, any insights or wins that you can share?
Yes, absolutely. I guess I shared our little anecdote about back in stock earlier. That's one of my favorite kind of anecdotes, but we've saw a major increase in our revenue since launching Shopify, 48% increase in revenue, a 10% increase in our average order value, and then a almost 20% increase in conversion rate. So I think just how much easier it is for the customer to shop on Shopify is just very clear immediately upon replatforming. I enjoy shopping our site as a customer much better than it did before. I feel like the dollars we're spending to prospect and to advertise to customers pays off because we're driving them to a site that we're proud of, that's easy to shop on. Mark, you mentioned Shop Pay earlier, but I think people, trust Shopify and it's easy to log in, almost too easy to check out at. So, at times I feel like my credit card is probably hates when a website's on Shopify because it's just like a one-click checkout. But, having Shop Pay has been great as well. I feel like we're in a really great rhythm. We have great partners like Coldsmoke, but also, we use SearchSpring for merchandising. We use Matrixify to create SKUs. As time has gone on, we've really been able to divvy out tasks and divvy out responsibilities and get in a really great rhythm. I don't have enough great things to say about Shopify and the transition and the Coldsmoke team as well.
Well, thank you for that, Hailey. And it goes both ways. Your whole team is amazing. And so now that the new site the site is live, where are you going from here? What are some plans for the future?
Our big plan for this year is to gear up for international shipping. again, something we really couldn't do on Magento, but that it's very easy and straightforward to do in Shopify. So that's our big project for the year. Another one that we're working on is buy online, pick up in store. I mentioned many times our POS locations. I think just having that omni-channel ability for someone to purchase something online and pick it up in store is something we're also excited about and is possible in Shopify. We've recently started site testing, which has been really exciting. Excited to learn more there. And to your point, Mark, it's like you don't know what the customer really cares about until you start testing and really seeing what has an impact. So we've been really excited to get that up and running, and then just refining and increasing the personalization on our site, making the customer feel welcome and kind of bringing that in-store experience to our website is something we're always thinking about as well.
Great. Really exciting roadmap. Well, I think that's as good a place to wrap up as any. So thank you to everyone who joined the webinar. Thank you so much to our panel, Pedro, Matt, and on the technical side, and Hailey, thanks for joining to share your experience migrating Sid and Ann Mashburn from Magento over to Shopify Plus. We'll be sure to share the recording to everyone who registered, as well as that study that I mentioned from the Big Three consulting firm about how Shopify's checkout is the most performant checkout in the ecosystem. If you have any questions, please feel to connect with me on LinkedIn or reach out via our website at coldsmoke.co. That is all for now. Thanks so much and take care.